Systems. I'm here with Larry Katzman, President of and CEO of AIS, and we're on our road trip. New episode. So Larry, can we start off a little bit by telling us a little bit about yourself, your company, maybe a little story, something fun?
Sure. Yeah. Bill, thanks for having me on this trip. I'm excited to be on a road trip, talking about the things that we get to do every day in our own jobs, and doing it on the road. There's always something about road trips to me that bring out some goodness. So I appreciate being here. I appreciate what you're doing. I also really like that you're touring the country to visit friends, employees of your company, customers, family. It's to me a big part of what we do as leaders in our business is get out there and visit people. And what an organic way to do it on the road. So sure, let me start with AIS. AIS is a 43-year-old company at this point, founded in 1982, not by me. I think I was 8 years old in 1982 or 7 years old.
Oh, sure.
So
sure.
I didn't start the business. We are a cloud services company, an IT services company. We provide consultants that build large-scale systems for highly regulated customers in financial services, in health and life sciences, in energy and utilities, and for the federal government, both defense, intel, and then also civilian agencies. So we really specialize in being technical experts in the technology spaces that we cover. We have 6 solution areas. We cover all 6 of those with experts that understand how to apply the technology to either business or mission opportunities or challenges so that our customers can get better end results. I always say the A in AIS stands for applied. It actually stands for Applied Information Sciences. And the applied is the most important part of it. We're applying this technology not for the sake of technology. The way I say it is we don't do tech for the tech of it. It's for some outcome.
That's on your shirt.
It is.
Okay.
It's actually
I thought I saw that. I was like, I thought I saw that today.
Yeah, it's weird to wear a shirt with your own quote on it. There's probably
that means you've arrived.
That. No, I think that says something way different about me than that I've arrived.
Right,
so
right.
I didn't make the shirt, but the reason I put that out there is that I think it's important for people to know we're a consulting company. The reason we exist is not just for the sake of technology. It's what our passion is. We're technologists, but applying it is really the magic, so that our customers get better outcomes than they would without it. And it's a big part of who we are. AIS, we're about 750 people. We are employee owned. We have an ESOP in place, an employee stock ownership plan. That means everybody in the company within the first couple of years you get enrolled in the program and you become an employee owner. Of our 750 employees, we have about 275 of those are in India, in Hyderabad and the surrounding area, and they have a corresponding stock ownership program there too. We have a corresponding stock ownership for them in India as well. So the idea is everybody at AIS has a piece of this rock. Everybody benefits from the financial success of the company, not just a few select shareholders. We're also venture-backed. We have a venture capitalist firm, Blue Delta Capital Partners, as part of our business, and injected some capital into the business 5 years ago. We are a management-led company for that reason. There's no majority owner, as we really are an employee-focused company for that reason.
Okay.
So,
how about you? A little of your history. How are you here today?
It's a long and winding road, unlike this one, which is very straight.
Right, Indiana.
Here in Indiana, my journey started in August of 2000. I joined AIS as a software developer. I like to say an entry-level software developer. I was a couple years out of college and had worked for another Microsoft partner that I joined right out of school, and spent a few years building on project as a developer. Really wanted to step out of that world of coding and try my hand at defining the solutions we were going to create for our customers, learning their business, and then making suggestions. What today we call account management. really helping our customers envision solutions. So the company offered me a shot. They said the next contract that comes out, you'll be the first person on the ground and shape it as you think you can. That happened to be a federal contract, and I didn't really know anything about federal contracting. I did that job with a good friend of mine. We were the first two on the ground, and we grew that to a pretty significant piece of business for AIS. So while we were doing that, we started expanding outside of that agency and picked up 2 other customers, and we had already had 1 government customer. So now we have these 4 customers. We formed a federal team around that. I eventually took on a leadership role in that federal team that we formed, and we really grew the company. We went from about $15 million in revenue to $50 million in that era, and still balanced commercial and federal. I had moved out of commercial and moved into that federal group, and we were there for quite a few years, and eventually pulled out of the billable world. I was still billing to clients while we were managing the federal business. I was still on site every day with our customers. In 2016, I completely stepped out of billable work and became our vice president of business development, and the motivation there was to grow the business. One of the challenges we faced was, as a company that had high retention and not high growth, it was stymieing the career growth opportunities for people. And Fred Element, our founder and CEO at the time, felt like that was our mission, was we had to make sure that we were providing opportunities for growth for our people. And if the company's not growing and people aren't leaving, there's really no opportunity there. So to jumpstart that growth, I took that role on in 2016. A few years later, as that worked and the company started growing, I moved into the role of Chief Operating Officer, COO, which was really to scale the rest of the business. Now that we had built some sustainable growth, we wanted to ensure everything else was scaling with it. Fred wanted to retire and exit the business, but not sell the business. So my next mission became to raise capital to allow him to exit the business, but keep us who we are. So that's when we brought in Blue Delta Capital that I mentioned earlier. With the closing of that transaction in 2020, I went from COO to CEO. We formed a 7-person board of directors that's still in place today. So still a management-led company, and it feels like a lot of change in that history. That was 25 years in about 5 minutes.
Right.
But the most important thing that we tried to do, and I think we have done during that time, is not change the culture of the company. We're still about the people. We're still about delivering great results for our customers. We're still about applying technology. And I've been very fortunate to get to lots of different roles, perform in many different roles throughout that journey. I learn a lot about myself, about the things I like to do, the things I don't like to do, and find myself in this role today, enjoying it more and more every year.
By the way, I want to say, I actually I've been thinking about your RV story, and the reason you should tell it is because for someone that's paying attention, I think it says a lot about who you are and how you operate. So when we talk about all the leadership stuff, to me, the moral of your RV story, I think, says a lot about you.
Yeah, it depends which RV story, but I'll start with...
well, fair enough.
We're a family of 5. My wife, my 3 kids, and, Bill asked me to say something interesting about myself. And I think something we did that was a little out of the ordinary was took an RV trip to Texas once. We just rented an RV, drove to Texas, and had a great time. In fact, my favorite part of that story is we didn't tell the kids that we were doing it. We said we were just going to drive in our minivan to Texas, visit my daughter's friend. And at the last minute, rented an RV, and I pulled up in front of the house, and the kids came running out. Very cool.
Yeah.
We took it to Texas, and it turned out our plan to spend 4 or 5 days with his family turned out to be 4 or 5 hours because we were into the RV. We wanted to just keep going and see the rest of the country. And we got back from that trip, and shortly after bought our own RV. Our kids were homeschooled in this era, and while my wife was teaching them about all sorts of things like the civil rights era, we would get in the RV and go to locations like Little Rock, Arkansas, where the schools were integrated, or where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And whatever the curriculum was, we took these road trips
Wow.
around the curriculum, and sometimes just for fun to someplace. And at one point, they were gone for 7 months full time in the RV. That was the longest trip I think we did, where my wife, my 3 kids, and our dog Piper were in this RV quite a bit. I was flying around a lot at the time for AIS. I would drive. It wasn't quite like this machine that we're in today that's driving itself. I would do all the driving, set them up, and the towing, and all of that type of thing. And I'd occasionally have to leave them to go back to work and do what I had to do. I worked remote. This was pre-pandemic. Worked remote a lot. I was fortunate that I was able to do that. But a lot of flying around the country, supported people at work that allowed us to do that. I think that is an interesting thing that we got to do as a family, is get to go to 46 states together. We've actually been to more. My wife and I have been to 48. But to get to do that as a family on the road and see parts of the country and things that you just don't see when you're flying around. So
that's very cool. That's a serious commitment to education, too.
To experiential education.
To experiential education, yeah.
Right. And, that's, I think that's why maybe when you told me, hey, join me on my road trip, I was like, yeah, no problem.
You were the first one said, let's go. I was like, that was great. I appreciate it.
The road to me is a place to learn, grow, explore, and see things you wouldn't normally see. So it's
awesome.
The RV experience was fantastic. So I think that's something interesting about our lives and how we ended up where we are.
It's interesting. We have a very similar background to think about. So I get a bunch of questions for you. So I was not a founder, if you remember, but
right.
But I also went through and did all the jobs. So you really learn the company when you do all the jobs.
No doubt. In fact, that's kind of the toughest part as CEO is the areas that I never got to work in. I've always felt a little less adequate in those areas because the few jobs I didn't do, human resources, I never did that. I did some recruiting, of course, everybody recruits. And I have a background in accounting, so I was always comfortable in that world, but I never did that for the company. So in those areas, I've suffer a little bit of inadequacy because I didn't do the job. In the areas where you did the job, I feel like you have instant credibility as a leader.
Right.
Because you've been there and been in the role, and you have a little bit more empathy with the people that you're leading.
You can ask the right questions. Just enough information sometimes. Yeah.
Right. And not just the knowledge, but the credibility, I think, to me is what makes a difference.
What were some of your challenges along the way?
I think through the growth periods, certainly the biggest challenge there was cynicism. There were a lot of people just didn't believe we could do what we were setting out to do. And I didn't recognize that as the main goal. I had to get some help with that to understand that it's easy to talk about it and it's easy for people to listen and not be 100% on board, and you have to figure that part out. Pessimism creeps in. It stops everything in terms of progress, because there are people that will say, I have to see it to believe it, and those aren't the people that you need when you have an ambitious goal. You need people that have a can-do attitude, that maybe a little naive helps in that case, so that if you don't know how hard it is, you might be a little bit more open to, we can do this, of course we can do this. So cynicism creeps in at times in your team, with people around you, and even in yourself. And you can't let that be. To me, that tyranny of cynicism is the biggest risk to any massive goal that you have, any significant goal you have, even in life, beyond business. If you don't believe you can do it, you can't.
So one of the other episodes I did, I was talking to a guy about what the right person was, however that is. Did the right person for your company change over time, or has always been a certain kind of person? It kind of sounds like what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like,
a little bit.
Right
yeah,
person?
There's the old, the people that got you here can't take you there. I don't fully subscribe to that. I think sometimes there are some concerns, but at the core, no. I don't think the persona of our ideal employee has changed at all over the years. I guess the one thing I will say about that is earlier when we were much smaller, individual heroics were the norm. You had a lot of people that would do anything to get to success. And a lot of people will say that's not scalable. I'm not sure if I subscribe to that, but there's a shift you have to make at some point that you're trying to create systematic success. Yep. So that part did require some changes to the personality of the people in the company. And some people changed with the company and other people left. But what I mean by that is enabling other people to be successful becomes more important than being the person that gets it done. And if I can get it done, and I'm not talking about me usually, but if hypothetically I'm just an employee of the business, if I could get something done in 4 hours and I can get someone else to get it done in 12, I might be better off having the other person do it, because eventually they're going to be able to do it in 6 or 7 hours routinely, and you're building a cadre of people that can do things, and then you create this systemic success of the company.
So is that how you overcame the cynicism, or is that a different topic?
I overcame the cynicism, I think, by calling it out. And we're a very fortunate company that people stay for a long time. We have really long tenured employees. But I realized at some point that not everybody liked what we were doing, but they didn't feel like they could leave because they were so loyal to the company and what it was. But if they're not happy, I realized giving people permission to leave, which sounds ridiculous, right? I'm not literally giving them permission to leave.
No,
but I'm saying it's okay. If we've become something you don't want to be part of, it's not a bad idea to move on. I'm not going to be upset. We can still talk to each other, be friends, and do business together. It's no longer a good fit. So what I realized was the tyranny of cynicism. The way we've addressed that, or I've addressed it in the company, is I talk about it a lot. And if people are feeling that way, I give them permission to move on and say we should. Everybody should be somewhere where they're going to achieve their goals, their personal goals. And sometimes it's painful to lose people you've worked with for a long time. But if it's no longer a good fit, it's better that they move on than stay in that environment. Yep. And then for the people that hear it, and I think it sparks something like, oh yeah, you're right, I am being cynical, and you overcome it. It's like anything in life. You need to be made aware of it first. And I think people don't notice it creep in, because it doesn't usually, you don't wake up that one day and it's suddenly there. It builds up over time.
Right. So, along that part of the journey, have you got any particular good failure stories?
I got a lot of failure stories.
I know, right? Pick a couple good ones.
Sure. The first one that pops into my mind is I was new to government contracting. Half our business is commercial, half is federal. Yeah. We do all Microsoft Cloud work. For the most part, everything is somehow related to that, but the types of customers we serve are a little bit more diverse. Financial services, health and life sciences, utilities, in commercial, highly regulated industries, and then defense, civilian, and intel in federal. So a little wide for the size we are, but the services we do all is very similar. And in my early days of government contracting, I failed to realize the importance of the sort of a triad of relationships with the customer. There's the mission, the mission owners, the warfighter, the agent, the analyst, depending on the organization.
Yep.
The mission. There's the OCIO shop, the IT shop that we're supporting. And I paid a lot of attention to both of those. But I was not aware of the contract shop. That's also an important leg of that stool. And because of that, we didn't take advantage of, say, small business status the way we could have, potentially. We had misunderstandings of how the government was going to get to AIS contractually. I wasn't strategizing about that early enough in my career, and I feel like the company still has some challenges because of that, even though it was 10 or 15 years ago, because I didn't set us up as well as I could have for that transition into a mid-sized company. So certainly a lesson or a failure was pay attention to all three of those constituencies in the customer. from a people management perspective, not everybody is going to be wired the same way. That's pretty obvious now, but I think there were times where I thought people understood what we were trying to do if I just said it once. If I put it out there in an email or I said it in a meeting. And a lot of challenges that I've faced over the years, I realized that my team wasn't fully understanding what we were going to go do, even though I felt like I completely explained it to them once. And I remember somebody pointed out to me, well, yeah, you probably thought about that for months before you said anything about it. And you have notes and ideas and ways that you thought about that. We just heard it once. It may have been a 30-minute meeting, and you talked for 30 minutes, and that was it. I didn't appreciate how much reinforcement you had to do with that, and how to get that message to really soak into the organization.
That's funny. Have you ever noticed the quote on my email? The problem with communication is the expectation that it actually happened.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something like that. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
totally true.
People would say to me, "We have a communication problem in the company," and I always say, "I don't know. I get like 150 emails a day from everybody. I think we're talking a lot." That's a ridiculous comment that I made, because communication is not just the transmission of information and not just the receipt of it, but the understanding of it,
right,
and the buy-in. So I think I tackled that. We were talking last night about, I went into a cycle of doing monthly all-hands. I think I started that in 2016 as the Vice President of Business Development at AIS. Maybe it was 2017. And I did that pretty much up until this year, where every month I had 30 to 40, sometimes a full hour all-hands, where I talked through some of this stuff and tried my best to explain it, and it felt repetitive to me. I felt like every month I was talking about the same things. We've recently pulled that back to quarterly, but I realized that I think that helped. I think it created that repetition. And when I realized it was working, attendance was good, which is, I guess, a good sign. Sometimes people could just be joining and let it play in the background, but the better test of it was people would ask me questions about what we talked about in the all-hands, so I knew they were listening.
Right.
And the fact that they were asking questions meant it mattered to them. So that was the best method, I think, that we've used to overcome that. I try to do small group meetings. I'll be doing that tomorrow with a group of our about a dozen or so employees. I'm trying to do that too, because you need both settings, the sort of town hallish feel and then the broadcast feel.
What's your general topics for the town hall? How do you tackle it?
Town halls are so different. I really want the crowd to ask me questions, so I usually will try to kick that off with, what questions do you have? And it takes a bit for some of our crowds to warm up. Others jump right in. But I really want them to set the agenda, not me. Okay. I know what I've been talking about. I want to get to the parts that people don't understand. My favorite questions are when someone says, "I heard you say something on the all hands about X, Y, or Z. What did you mean by that?" It's not an insult that you didn't understand what I said.
No, it's a compliment that they heard the thing enough to ask about it. Yeah.
And even though I didn't do a good enough job of explaining it for that person, then great, you're giving me the opportunity to make that right. Because the most important thing to me is that everybody understand it. And then sometimes the questions cause me to think, hey, I missed something on this. There's an angle there.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna shift direction on something based on those conversations, because the employees are on the front line. They're on the ground. And we talked a few minutes ago about the credibility of having been there. It's been a while for me since I've been on the ground doing the work day to day. So to be able to get that valuable feedback in the town hall, I really try to balance it. I don't like, my favorite town halls are not when we talk about the business operations, benefits, how I'll just say the back office functions support what we're doing. I know we have to do that, but it's the part that I feel is the hardest for me to get excited about. To me, what I get excited about is, how can we use the technology that we are experts in to improve the outcomes our clients are seeking.
Yeah.
That type of ideation to me is what gets my juices flowing. So I try to balance those two ends of that spectrum, because the truth is employees absolutely need to get their questions answered about how the day-to-day health insurance works, or PTO, or whatever the benefits
Right.
are.
But the more people you get on that call, the harder that becomes, because it's not relevant to everybody. Like,
Sure.
yeah.
That's why the town halls are good for that.
Yeah. So your town halls, well, they're good for that. You allow people to ask a specific question to their specific situation in general as well in the town hall?
I will, although when it comes to, there have been times where I say we need to follow up offline.
Yeah.
If people ask.
Yeah, if it's really specific, it tends to be.
And that does happen. And
Yeah.
the other thing I've learned is avoid the back and forth. I try to respectfully ask the crowd to not ask a follow-up question, maybe one. But I've noticed in the past, some of my less constructive town halls, I get into a conversation with one person. It's not amusing for the rest of the room. It's not engaging for the rest of the room.
Especially if it's not relevant
Right,
to them.
and I'm happy to follow up with that employee one-on-one. It's not that I want to avoid the conversation. It's just not.
Which it's not a bad thing in your town hall. It seems like for you to say, "I'll call you right after."
Right.
I mean, everyone's gonna go, "Oh, yeah, that's cool."
Yeah, and if they're in person, we typically we try to do a happy hour
that's good.
or something like that. So there'll be time to talk about it there.
God, the thought of doing it in person. Okay, that must be. Do we do that anywhere? Do you do in person?
That's what I'll be doing tomorrow in Ohio.
Oh, with the small group, yeah.
Yeah. Our town halls are usually fairly small groups. The largest I can recall was this is quite a few years ago, but we would get 50 or 60 people.
Okay. I was imagining. So we do all hands once a quarter. Yours isn't necessarily. Your town halls aren't necessarily in all hands. They're with groups.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes more sense.
The all hands is usually just me talking.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a radio show to me. I always say that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of interactivity because we really can't have that with the size of the business. So what we did there, Bill, we broke the company up. When our goal, we set our North Star goals. Let's get to $100 million in revenue. When you look at the data, very few companies get there. It's a high mountain to climb. And this is where I was talking about cynicism. A lot of people said, well, we've been a $15 million company for a long stretch, then we were a $50 million company for a long stretch. And you just told us something like 0.1% of companies get there. That's where that cynicism creeps in. But to me, well, that's why we're doing it. It's hard. It's a good challenge. It's mutually beneficial for the employees. It creates growth opportunities.
Yeah.
And we're an employee-owned company. The employees own a big chunk of the company, so it creates wealth for all of the employees. So it's a good challenge to go after, and it is very hard. Most things that are really worth doing are hard. So we were successful. We grew the company. We had a 5-year plan to go from 50 million to 100, and 5 years later, I believe we hit 112 without acquisitions. It's funny, that used to be so ingrained in my memory, the exact numbers, but I think it was 112 with netted out acquisition that we made. And once we achieved that goal, so, okay, what's the next goal? And I'm going to get back to the all hands in a second. So what we did was we broke the company into 3 business units: civilian, defense and intel, I should say, and commercial. And I think the largest one may have been $40 million when we did the breakup.
Yep.
And we said, okay, now we have 3 business units, and we put management teams in front of them. And the idea was, okay, take the lessons of going from 50 to 100, and let's do it again. But let's do it 3 times in parallel. So each business unit, it was stood up with the stated goal of get to $100 million.
Yep.
And the cynics that said, well, that's really hard, we can't do that. Well, we just did it. And the same team that did it, we're all still here. But now each BU business unit has its own managing director leading it, a technical director that serves as the CTO, and a director of ops that serves as the COO. And the idea is that they don't have to repeat all the mistakes we made on our way to 50 to 100. We can apply what we learned, but each one can incubate some new ideas.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought this up was instead of doing monthly all hands, well, now I can do them quarterly because I want the business units to do monthly town halls. So twice a quarter, it's a group of I don't know, 100, 150 people, maybe 200 at the high end, meeting in a town hall style meeting with their management team. And sometimes I join those, sometimes I don't. And you create this micro culture that maintains that small business feeling, that community.
I love it.
That we really enjoyed having when we were smaller.
So
and
are
preserve
those
the culture?
Are those business unit leads, whatever you call them? What do you
Managing
call them?
directors.
Managing directors.
Yeah.
Are they? Do you view them as like their own presidents?
Yeah, exactly.
Of their divisions.
That's right. They're now we do have some leadership above them that actually have that exact title. But the way it's designed is we want to scale that out. So I'll use commercial as an example. When commercial gets to $100 million, I don't make any mystery to anybody of what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide it in half again. And I'm going to challenge them to get to $100 million.
Right.
And the beauty of that is I don't want people to feel like, oh, well, there's 3 business units. That means there's 3 managing director positions. No, there's not. If our financial services group gets to $50 million, say, well, it becomes its business unit. And its director gets promoted and is a managing director. And one of the tech leads in there will hopefully be promoted into the technical director. And one of the program managers becomes the director of ops. So there's an endless supply of job opportunity, career advancement opportunity, so long as the company is growing. And then each BU is motivated to help each other because we all own stock in the company, not our business units, in the company. So if it's in Defense's best interest to move a consultant, by consultant I mean someone that bills to our customers, from Defense to commercial, we'll do that. That's for the good of the company. Because we're all owners. We all have equity in the business, and that's what we're playing for. It's long-term value creation of the business, and everybody gets a piece of it. And then there's, of course, a little bit of competition between the business units. That's good. That fuels people. The first to 100 million, there's some talk about that. And that's great. But we also want cooperation. We don't want them to feel like they're really competing with each other. They are trying to help each other out. So, Bill, I was going there because of all the comms questions, right? You end up with these contained units, and then you have the broader community of AIS. And I really try to think of them as franchisees of AIS. So you use the phrase, are they the presidents of their own business? Yes, but we want them to do it the AIS way. We're proud of the culture we've created and the delivery results we've created.
Right.
So there's guardrails, to use a road trip reference.
So I'm asking these questions, and I got one I want to go back to, but the synergies, you're further ahead, obviously, but the synergies between what I'm trying to do, and I just have different names for some of it, probably because we talk a lot. And you want to just come do it? You want to come run my company so I don't have to do it? Because I figure someone who knows what they're doing should do it. Like, you've done it before, so I like the same idea. Like, we kind of broke up into units, but each unit's trying to achieve it's like very similar. It just seems logical.
I think it is logical, and I didn't know how to do it until I did it.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't think of this in a box. Bill, I'm a member of many networking groups. I talk to other CEOs all the time.
Yep.
None of us have all the answers, and I don't even think the people that have done it before are always the most equipped to do it again. Sometimes being a little naive, I think I mentioned this earlier, is helpful because you're not as you don't let that cynicism creep in.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little easier when you don't know about the road bumps ahead, and then when you get to them, having people to help you guide you through it, it's pretty powerful. And that's what one of my favorite things I get to do now in this role is help our managing directors through some of the scenarios that I've been through in a similar role that they're in. We didn't call it that at the time, but and it's not always me that can do that. Sometimes I know someone else that's been there, done that can help someone, and I can just be the connector. I do get joy out of being the guy to get to help somebody through that, but I get just as much pleasure out of connecting other folks that can help solve those problems.
Great. So before I finish this kind of section, can I go back to the customer conversation for a second? You identified kind of 3 parts to the customer when you were telling the story about something you were missing early on.
Yeah.
Contracts being the one that was out.
Right.
I seem to run into, so you've got the IT organization you're supporting, the kind of customer and their needs.
The mission, yeah.
Right. And then the contracts. Sometimes to me it's a little bit confusing. I don't know if you ran into this, but it's like I don't know if you know the Air Force stuff, but like ACC providing the requirements over here, and then your program officer supporting, implementing it. So they're a customer, but your real customer is the mission customer. So
Yeah.
do you spend energy trying to figure out, okay, who's my real customer, and then talk with your people about that?
That's, yes, tons of energy as a consultant.
Yeah.
That's what I did, and that's what I'm trying to systematically create in the company. I feel like we are consultants. We don't work for these organizations. We're brought in for our knowledge and expertise to help them. And the first way you help an organization is you understand what it does, what it's trying to do. The law enforcement customer that my very first assignment where I was the lead from AIS was for a law enforcement customer. And I didn't understand the mission at all. The work was through their CIO shop, and I was just told to convert this one tech to another tech. And I started asking questions in the second or third week because I didn't understand why they were doing what they were doing. And I had to learn more about the mission. And I did that by meeting people, by reading books about the organization. For me, I was fortunate that was a very well-known organization, so it was easy to learn about it. I went to my local sheriff's office, had a Citizens Academy. I don't think that's what they called it, or something like that. I remember it was about a 12-week course where I got two or 3 hours one night a week. I'd go to the local office and they would teach us stuff about what local law enforcement does. And it culminated with a ride-along, which was like a 12-hour shift I did.
Wow.
With a deputy. This was Loudoun County back when I lived in Loudoun County, Virginia. And it gave me so much insight of how to suggest how to use technology. I knew technology. I didn't know law enforcement. So I got to do that. And it was game-changing. And that's where I think I missed the third leg of the stool, because I realized, okay, I've got to manage the IT relationship well, because they are the people that secure and govern and do really important work. But if I don't know the mission, then I'm not being a good consultant. I'm being an okay consultant. I want to be better than okay. I want to be great. And to get great, I really had to learn the mission and then be able to be the order maker, not the order taker. I'm suggesting ideas of what we can do to do the things that agency wanted to do.
Did you learn about that customer at that depth before you had him, like, and you were pursuing to go win the work, or after you won the work?
It was after I had the work, after it was won, and I was already on site.
Yeah.
And by the way, not a bad thing. I think that's
better than not doing it.
Learning from within was, in some ways, more authentic. And I did that by being curious, asking questions, meeting some really great people that were like-minded. How can we better the organization? And look, the next job I had, the next assignment I had was at the Marine Corps. And I'm not a Marine. I didn't serve in the military, and I can't exactly learn that one the same way. It's just different. But it was my timing was during the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and I was fortunate enough to be exposed to Marines that were coming back from theater to the same place that we were working. So I knew them. They left, and they came back, and I still knew them. So it was incredibly helpful to get to talk to them about the experience using the technology we were building in theater when they got back.
Wow.
And able to shape it. But it wasn't because, for better or worse, it's not because there was really well-organized sessions to do that. It was us as a team getting to know the people and talking to them and asking them questions. Very organic. So I think, look, in our commercial business, it's different. I would sit with executives and ask them questions and learn the business as best I could. It got harder and harder as I was less hands-on in the business. And that's, again, I'll go back to systemic success. That's why now my goal is to not be the person doing it, but to make everybody else aware of the benefits of doing that for their own careers, not just for the growth of the business. Yes, for the growth of the business, but also for their own careers, and also for the customer's benefit. The more we know and understand better off we can suggest solutions for them, how to apply the technology.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed part one of the conversation with Larry. Maybe we should coin a phrase, conversation with Larry, and keep doing it. Yeah, it was it was great. We had a great time. It was great talking to him. I don't know, we talked as much or more offline as on, but I think you guys got some good stuff. So I look forward to inviting you to join us for part two, coming up in probably a couple of weeks. We'll have that all out for you. All right, maybe even a week, who knows? Depends on the comments and the demand here. All right, thanks.